Hi, everyone. Welcome to Where Are All the Women? I'm Meghan Murphy. This is Mary Lou Singleton.
Hi, everybody.
If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. I'm sorry that I'm a bit congested. I have a cold. But I'm mostly okay. I feel like I've been faring better in the cold world in recent years. I feel like I get sick and it's kind of not really that bad, which is nice. I feel like I finally repaired my immune system.
That's great. Leaving Canada.
Yeah, leaving horrible Canada. I think like focusing on kind of like gut repair and, getting excessive amounts of, not excessive, amounts of vitamin D that humans need to stay healthy, which
Totally.
probably seem excessive if you're coming from Canada. And yeah, I think just generally knowing how to take better care of myself, my bone broth diet, and so on and so forth. And how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Just had a crazy couple of weeks at work, and I feel like the world is just gradually getting more crazy. Like my little sphere is okay with my immediate family, but everything is just heating up. Maybe it's just Albuquerque, like psychos on the street and just open air drug markets and everybody's stressed out.
Yeah, I mean, it probably depends on where you are and what you're looking at, but it does sound like there's a lot of cities where things are getting gradually more insane and chaotic and unstable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you want to talk more in detail about that or not.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Fair.
Very unstable.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, my biggest fear is always of late anyway around AI and sort of like the digitization of everything. Like I think that people are so going gung-ho, full on, no questions asked into everything is digitized and everything AI, and like we're just essentially implanting computer chips into our brains. I mean, not literally at the moment, although it's
That's
possible,
coming.
but it's essentially the same thing. I mean, we've just fully opted into being tracked at all times, like.
Yeah. When I'm always like going conspiracy on it, but I think the manufactured chaos in the blue cities is part of it, where the crazier it gets out there, the more you just want to shop online and be online and not leave your house because there are crazy people everywhere you go. They're like just psychotic, drug-addled, violent men all over the streets, coming into the grocery store, coming into wherever you happen to be living or shopping. And it's making people go more into the digital world socially with that. I think it's all orchestrated to try to destroy the legacy system and the old ways of doing things and get us more and more into the virtual world.
It does seem like that, including everything that happened during COVID, of course, where they isolated these young people at a very pivotal time in their lives when they should have been exploring relationships with the opposite sex and being socialized and, sort of individualizing, I suppose. And instead they were just forced online and forced to be isolated and forced into pornography and forced into, like I see it when I'm dealing with younger people, like I guess Gen Z people, but you can tell like they have a completely different personality in real life than they do online. Like they'll be very, very outgoing and upbeat and, seemingly confident in their TikTok videos or on Instagram or whatever, and you meet them in real life and they can't make eye contact with you and they're super shy and like it's so strange to me. They have these two different personalities from developing one personality on the internet and then not developing a personality in real life.
Absolutely. And it was bad before COVID. We've talked about this before, that kids aren't getting socialized like they used to. They don't run around in packs of kids. They don't have expected behaviors. Kids who have a harder time learning the social rules, instead of getting like harsh feedback from the people around them to be normal and behave, they're getting diagnoses and they're getting told that they'll never be normal. There's no socialization going on that used to happen. So everybody, this generation was already medicalized and pathologized and not socialized well, and then sticking them all online for years on end, especially again in the blue states are the worst for this.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting. I mean, I wonder, I do think that where AI taking us is bad. Like, I think that it's bad and dangerous and I don't even understand.
Of course
But
it is.
but it's interesting, like, to think about how it will impact relationships and how men and women deal with each other in real life. Because so Sarah Hayter tweeted something interesting, and this might be like way overly optimistic, but I really hope that she's right, because I was like, okay, well, if this is true, then maybe that'll be a positive thing. But she tweeted this image of somebody online who had changed their profile picture from he is a male named Connor to a girl, and AI can just do that really easily. And so he turned himself in his profile picture to a very normal, realistic looking, pretty, young woman. And Sarah tweeted, "Very soon, the benefits of being attractive online will disappear as everyone begins to use AI to perk up their real appearances or to create fully fake identities. Real life hot people, particularly women, will start to log off and be where their beauty can still dazzle." Because you may have seen this image circulating where, these guys, these tech bros, they're always inventing women. They never invent men like this. But this beautiful new, I think she was an actress, but it was just a fully AI person, and she was very beautiful, and she had a whole, they seem like real life human beings. You can sort of tell because they're almost too perfect that they're AI. But then, I thought, I was like, well, how is this going to impact online? Like, it makes me think maybe online dating is over, because if you're dating online now, you really are going to have to assume that you're dealing with robots or fake people or AI people. And so if you genuinely want to meet people, I feel like you will have to go out into the real world.
I think there will be a bifurcation of humanity and people who want to just avoid being online all the time, who want to stay in the real world, and people who are just get more and more online. And those people probably will eventually live some kind of life, kind of like the Matrix, where they're just completely plugged in with feeding tubes and catheters and just not, in their virtual reality suit as their only sensations. There are people headed that way, and there's psych meds and on. And then more people are just breaking free. I see it more with the younger generation. I'm seeing more and more high school age boys dropping out to go, like really smart kids going into construction and becoming electricians, wanting to be entrepreneurs, doing things that still require a body. I'm seeing more young women. There are fewer young women than men, but it's more. I am seeing a trend in more young women wanting the same thing, like wanting to get away from the virtual life. I see a lot more anxiety in females right now. I think it's a really hard time because so much of what made life bearable for females is missing now.
I do. I mean, the bright side of this for me would be if only interacting online ended. But then the dark side is that, most people, especially young people, are going to move to only interacting online. But I would love to see an end to online dating, because I think that it's weird
it's
and
awful.
gross. And I'd love to see the value of like real life attraction come back. Like, I sort of thought about it in terms of like the meritocracy of hotness. Like, these AI people, or these women who are, fully, filtering themselves and AIing themselves into these like beautiful Kardashian-esque women that they don't even really look like. I mean, they aren't deserving of this attention. Not that this is necessarily how I think about these things, but it's like, why are you catfishing people? You can't, if you genuinely want a real life relationship and a real life connection, and you want somebody who's going to be interested in you sexually in real life, why are you posting these completely filtered to the point where you're essentially unrecognizable photos of yourself on the internet? Like, you're getting attention and validation, but not for anything. You are already, I already think that's true of women who thought online, because these strange men are giving them attention and they don't really know anything about these girls or care about them. And, they don't know anything about how they would interact in real life, which has so much to do with real life attraction. So it's already kind of BS. But then, this is somebody you don't even look like. What are you trying to do here? I don't get it. Like, what's the end goal here?
Yeah, I don't think people are very forward thinking about it. I don't think they're thinking of an end goal. They're just living in a reactivity mode. And as far as real life attraction, these are people who, they have no idea what you're talking about with just chemistry, or being at a party and being attracted to like the glint in someone's eye, or a very quick witty remark that somebody made, right? Or just the way somebody smells, the way their body moves. Like, the old ways of attraction are completely foreign to a huge chunk of this generation. They have no idea what you're talking about. They've never experienced that. And on top of that, they don't party, they're not risk taking, they're not hanging out. I can't stop emphasizing enough, but kids that age socialize in groups, and they're not hanging out together and having that group dynamism of young people of early reproductive age, just that like pheromone central party scene that was a big part of our development, right?
Yeah. Gen X, the greatest generation, which they did another, it was a very good piece that they published recently.
Amanda Fortini's piece.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. And this was in the New York Times. And they interviewed all those actors and actresses from the Breakfast Club era. And I just think it's so nice that everybody agrees that Gen X is the best, and then all the other generations also agree that Gen X is the best. The millennials, I think, are the ones who I think really push woke, and I think we're really into neuroticism and mental illness, and pill popping, and and just kind of glorified anxiety and depression. So they kind of screwed up and got screwed up. And and then poor Gen Z, although I do have some, and again, like I have a lot of friends who are millennials, actually, because I have a lot of friends who are younger than me, and some of them are doing fine, and I know some Gen Z people who seem to be doing fine, but Gen Z seems more inclined to be pushing back towards woke at very least, which in some way gives me hope that maybe they'll also be pushing back against the all-in online thing that the millennials 100% embraced. I mean, poor Gen Z was hardly given a chance. But
that's the first generation really raised on the internet, or with the internet everywhere. Gen X, we were just born in this historical sweet spot. It was an amazing time to be born with all the, especially in the US and Canada, probably in Europe as well, like all this post-war prosperity raised by people who had experienced adversity. Like, our parents were not naive to that. But I think we're the first generation, the males of our generation were the first generation to assume they wouldn't be drafted, right? At least here in the US, where Vietnam had been such a freaking disaster, they were not going to draft again anytime soon. So like, not having that specter of being hauled off to war in our males, we're the first generation of females to have reproductive autonomy and not have that specter of an unplanned pregnancy is going to completely wreck your life. But still raised in the old containers of rules around behavior that had been shaped by previous generations. Like it hadn't completely destroyed the social signaling and the social traffic lights, right? Like we still had some caution around our behavior.
I will say that what's interesting is that I quite like younger men. And like, you know, like I have a lot of male friends who are younger than me, like by, 10 years or something like that. I mean, I guess women also, but I also have a lot of female friends who are my age or even a bit older. And younger, and to be honest, like the men who try to date me are usually quite a bit younger, so I interact with younger men a lot more. And I think, and I've talked about this with other women who are my age too, where it seems to be like a trend of younger men going for older women. And part of that, I think, is just that women who are around my age don't necessarily look our age, so nobody can really tell anyway. But I find that there's something about, with older men and younger men, there's a big gap in what men think that women are entertained by and what women want in a man. So the younger men I find are a lot better at listening, and it's not fake listening, like it's genuine listening, like they're genuinely interested in you and interested in hearing what you have to say, and they're polite and they'll listen to you and ask a question. And I think a lot of women can probably relate to this, where they're dating men who are older, or just interacting, just talking to men who are older, let's say, I don't know, in their mid to late 40s or 50s, where they think that they're supposed to like regale you with stories and jokes, and they never stop to ask you a question, and they assume they know more about you than everything, so they're telling you things that you already know, but they would have no idea because they've not thought to ask your opinion or let you say something about it. And it's like a very, very annoying and frustrating quality that to me is sort of like an instant turn. Well, it makes me enraged almost instantly. And I've had boyfriends like this. I've had boyfriends where I just got so tired of them. We'd go out for lunch or for dinner and they would just never ask me a question. Like not even like, how was your day? And I would just be there like, and they're blabbing on about work or whatever, and so I've noticed that. So I think that for the younger men, I think that they probably have evolved in a semi-positive. I mean, everybody likes to hate on feminism now these days, but I think that they've evolved in a semi-positive way in that regard. I mean, that I sort of assume that has to do with feminism in a way, like this idea where a man doesn't mean you need to impress a woman all the time with how intelligent and wealthy and interesting you are. I don't know.
Things were still very sexist, and as I'm an earlier Gen Xer than you, but I grew up with a lot of sexism. The American Medical Association didn't lift the cap on female medical students until the late 70s in the United States, where only 7% of medical students could be female. So most men had never met a female doctor. They didn't, that was like, oh, women can't be doctors. I have to say, I was raised in Catholic school in pretty conservative town, but I don't think that was unusual for my generation to have that coming at you. But I was told things like, oh yeah, you're super smart now. You're smarter than all the boys. But once you get your period, all the boys will be smarter than you. Like you're not going to be smart anymore.
What?
I was told I would like stop being smart. I wouldn't be good at math anymore once I got my period. The sexism was so intense. Women can't be a surgeon. Like, what if she's premenstrual? Like, what a woman can't be an engineer? Like, there was so much overt sexism going on before the second wave, when the professions were opened up to women. Even in my childhood, it's still like, the women who had jobs were teachers, secretaries, nurses, and nuns. There were so few women in the professions that I ever saw. It really wasn't until the 80s that burst open for women. And that alone has made men less sexist, has made everyone less sexist. People don't I can't imagine somebody saying that anymore. I don't even hear men saying women can't be surgeons anymore, where I heard that constantly, even through college, as someone who was tracked pre-med like that. I heard it all the time. Women just don't have good enough visual spatial skills. It's just a true thing. They can't be surgeons. And now we have stacks of evidence that female surgeons in many areas have better outcomes because women tend to be better at cleaning up. Like, it's just, they're less likely to leave a sponge in somebody and, stuff like that. I mean, it's not a huge statistical difference, but there are places where we have studies that female surgeons actually do a better job. The world is different now. It is in many ways much better. And I think that's something I worry about, that Gen Z and Gen Alpha really can't understand. When I see these young women wanting to go back to the trad ways, they don't realize how bad it was.
Right.
Like, they just really have no idea how sexist the world was and what women, like, everyone needs to watch Mad Men or watch, really, I know it's not entirely historically accurate, but it was legal to just constantly sexually harass women, and women were dealing with that all the time in the workplace if they ended up there. Women in the sciences were erased from everything, and women would discover things, and the men on the team would take credit for it. Carol Downer and her group who invented menstrual extraction, a lot of those women had master's degrees in hard sciences, but were excluded from having PhDs. Their husbands were able to go on to PhD programs. The women got no credit. They were called lab assistants, even though many times they were smarter than the men. Like, they had higher IQs and better aptitude. Things were bad. Things were really not good. I don't want to minimize what's gotten better. And I really worry about people wanting to return to something. It's like, no, this is human evolution. Like, we're learning and growing and changing. There were unintended negative consequences of women's liberation, but that doesn't mean we want to go back. We want to learn and correct, but not return to full-on male supremacy and women being treated as second-class citizens who can't think for themselves.
Yeah. Okay. This is a really good point, because I think that we are having trouble right now, as not you and I necessarily, but, in the zeitgeist or whatever, in the online conversation, in the culture, in terms of figuring out what to do, because there are bad things that have happened to men and women's relationships and to families and to marriage, on account of sort of like an overcorrection, maybe you could call it, to the sexism of the past, which is that, we don't want to do purity culture where women have to stay virgins until marriage and they have no autonomy and no independence, and their husbands are the providers and they stay at home, and all that women really should be doing is being mothers and housekeepers. But now it's like, okay, we don't need men at all. We don't need marriage. We don't need family. We can have it all. We as women can wait forever to have kids. We can decide when we're 40, we'll just freeze our eggs. And what's the point in getting married? And what's the point of having this kind of family structure, which has been harmful to kids and harmful to men and women, I guess, in a lot of ways, because I think a lot of men feel sort of like lonely and purposeless, and women miss their windows to have kids and then feel regretful. Some of them, not all of them, but I think that's something that does happen. And the devaluing of marriage, I think, probably hurts kids. But then people are like, and actually this is, so I wrote a piece about, casual sex recently on my Substack. I should put that in the show notes down below, but for those listening or watching, it's at meganmurphy.ca, which was responding to something that Brett Weinstein had tweeted about the impacts of the sexual revolution, which is to say that, we lost something really important in that. So he, hold on, I'm just going to pull up the tweet. So he says the sexual revolution disrupted something fundamental. Sex, it turns out, is far more important than we understood, and making it cheap unleashed a cascade of negative effects. Among the worst, men and women have now become unsympathetic and grotesque in each other's eyes. Like it's so tied to this sort of devaluing of marriage and family and that kind of, traditional family structure was, and of course, connected to women's ability to get the pill and choose when they become pregnant, and I suppose have easier access to abortion, was that now technically women could have casual sex free of consequence. And what I was saying is that is not true. Like, sex is still not casual. It's not casual for women in particular on an emotional or spiritual or physical level. And there are consequences, maybe not in terms of pregnancy, but in terms of hurt feelings and STIs. There's that also.
Totally.
But, it's women are wired to bond to the men they have sex with. And, we were not told that when we were growing up. We were basically given the impression during third wave feminism, so when I was a young woman, that we could and should be able to have this no strings attached casual sex with men and not worry about it. And I think it led us to detach and forced us to compartmentalize in ways that didn't feel good or comfortable. And we didn't figure out how to get men to commit, and now men don't have to commit, so they act like horrible pieces of shit. So that was, what Brett Weinstein was getting at also, was that now men are sort of operating at their base level, because women once were the gatekeepers to sex, and no longer are they doing that. So he says sex is naturally collaborative for women. Men have a collaborative mode and a predatory one. The sexual revolution caused women to drop their guard, rewarding men for predatory behavior. Women are now following suit. This is why men and women increasingly disgust one another.
Yes, it's definitely one perspective on it. I wouldn't entirely disagree with that. I just don't know what the solution is. Like, you can't legislate your way or like start having, I feel like authoritarian solutions just lead to bigger problems. I think we need a cultural change. And a big part of that is coming back to romance and understanding of sexuality as something sacred between people that has this powerful life-giving force behind it, which brings up another issue of the sexual revolution, which is people internally policing their own minds, especially on the left and definitely among progressives, to not want to be heteronormative, right? Like you can't say sex evolved to make babies, and that's really what that drive is about, is human reproduction. I'm afraid to say it because it's heteronormative, and it's so true. Like that, this is the whole reason we have a sex drive, is to reproduce. And human beings have a very long infancy where they are incredibly dependent on their mother, and that makes the mother very dependent on someone taking care of her because she's very vulnerable taking care of this little baby for so long. And that is why we're evolved to pair bond with each other. And people are afraid to talk about this out of fear of making the gay and lesbian community angry, out of fear of social sanctioning of whatever forces we think are going to come down on us if we talk about it.
Yeah, that part's interesting. And I've actually been having that conversation with a couple of people in my private life as well, who have been thinking the same thing. And it's like, how do we have this conversation where it's like, gay and lesbian doesn't really fit into evolutionary biology. Like, what is the purpose of this? And then can you say, oh, this is natural, and like, don't think about it. And I am not saying people shouldn't love who they want to love or partner with who they want to partner with. That's fine with me. If you want to love a man and live with a man and partner with a man as a man, then go ahead and do that. I would never put any kind of, or I would not that I'm in charge here, but I would never advocate to legislate against that. But at the same time, you know, I don't know, like, why did that happen? Where did that come from? Like, what's the purpose of this? It doesn't really make any sense.
I don't know. I think this is another area where Generation X had it right, where the understanding was, remember that, like 1 in 10, that across many species, about 10% of the population is same-sex attracted. It's okay. That's very different. Like having this mindset of, this is a minority of people who should not be persecuted versus kids are, I feel like children are being encouraged to be queer, that it's cool, it's uncool to be straight, like that. It's a very different thing than what's happening now. Like, hey, be yourself, be gay, you're born that way, versus
right.
Who wants to be straight? That's oppressive. I don't want to be the oppressor. I don't want to be like a gross straight person.
I remember feeling pushed that way by radical feminists.
Oh, well, there is the
like, why would you be with a man? Why don't you just be with a woman? Like, you can make that choice. And I was like, because that's kind of gross to me. Like, I'm not interested in vaginas because I'm heterosexual. Like, I'm not attracted to women in that way. But then I remember feeling like, oh, maybe I'm just being closed-minded, and maybe I should like open my mind to this. And of course, I didn't, and it didn't work. But and I knew other young women who tried to just decide to be like lesbians.
Yeah, political lesbianism is a thing. I think it works well for women with low sex drives,
or who are traumatized by men.
Yeah, or bisexual women. I think that's a whole other interesting phenomenon that came out of a reaction to, I mean, honestly, a lot of terrible male behavior and the reality of male violence. You can understand how women, that was a thought experiment, and some people actually ran with it. And yeah, I mean, I tried so hard to be a lesbian in college. I was like, God, my life. At the time, I thought my life would be easier if I just didn't have to deal with men. That was before I had enough life experience to understand that lesbians are just as capable of having really messed up, crazy relationships as heterosexual people are. It seemed appealing, but I just couldn't do it. I'm wired to be straight. Like I just couldn't. I couldn't do it. I had, the poor young lesbians that I messed with their heads. It wasn't my thing. I just couldn't get into it. But that was understood back then, right? You're born this way. And now that narrative has left. Now we have the craziness of transgenderism. It really opened up these insane floodgates that really changed so much of human behavior. So there have been so many factors that have changed our behavior since our generation was in its youth.
Mm-hmm. For those who are watching on YouTube, and if you have a question or a comment that you want us to address in the air, please use the super chat so that I see it and don't lose it in the live chat. Yeah, I mean, it's the reality is it's like this whole idea of inclusivity, which is forcing us to pretend that gay and lesbian or queer or whatever you want to call it, all these abnormalities are actually much more normal than they actually are, is sort of strange also. Like, it's like you can be inclusive and open-minded while acknowledging that, of course, the vast, vast, vast majority of the people on the planet are heterosexual and want to partner with the opposite sex and probably want to have a marriage-like relationship and have kids, and that actually is the norm. Like, I know that I'm an anomaly, when I don't want to be misinterpreted when I'm talking about, I enjoy being single, sometimes I enjoy being in relationships a bit too, but less so, I think. And I'm happy being single, and I was never particularly interested in having kids or getting married. And partly that was probably just me being me and independent and maybe difficult or uncompromising. And part of it was, I was modeled this relationship by my parents that I found really distasteful and disgusting. So there's all sorts of reasons for that. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to carve my own path and not be weighed down by kids, I suppose. But I also understand, and I do try to acknowledge when I can, that the reality for most women is not that. You know, I think most women probably do want to get married and have kids and have families.
Yeah. And I feel like those women should do it young. I'm going to say another thing that I police my own mind about, but I think we're supposed to find somebody we're really into, wait a while to get to know each other, and make sure no one's a psycho until you start having sex and have a baby.
How do you do that? I was just talking to my friend about this. Like, I agree with you. I think that's probably the best way to do things, but reality makes that sort of difficult. You know, like it's easy to say, I think if you maybe haven't dated in a long time, it's easy to say, meet somebody and get to know them and wait to have sex. But when you're actually meeting somebody and you're dating somebody and you guys are really into each other, that's really not a very easy thing to do. And I frankly have zero idea how anybody would wait till marriage, never mind like months down the line. And I think I was like, these women must have like a pretty low sex drive to be able to manage this, because I could not, and most of the women that I know who have high libidos really couldn't manage that. I don't know. This like completely contradicts my article saying that like casual sex is not a real thing. I don't know.
Well, I think I'm talking more to the youth first, and I think this is another thing that is so messed up, is that it's so cliche, but we've lost the village. And I think of growing up in a smallish town and going to grade school with people, then going to high school with people. You knew who was a psycho before you hit reproductive maturity. And if you grew up in a home without psychos, you weren't attracted to psychos, right? Like like that kid can't control his temper. He's always in trouble at school. He's like throwing stuff. His sisters don't like him. His mom doesn't like him. He's always causing problems. Now you run into that kid in Sayulita at a bar. You don't know his history. You don't know anything about him. Maybe he can keep his behavior together well enough for a couple of weeks, and then it's going to take a long time to figure out he's a psycho. But I bet the people who grew up with him knew that he had problems, you know, and not that people can't grow and change, but that was a big part of discernment, was you knew the people in your community. And the same with like college relationships. I went to a really small college. I know that's not the norm for most people, but so many of the people I know who started dating in college already knew each other as friends. They knew they liked their sense of humor. They knew they liked hanging out together. And most of those relationships have persisted. Like these people have all been married for 30 plus years. They have kids like that. That's a great place. It's a crucible of like an artificial village. And that doesn't exist for people anymore, right? Like people can't do a good character assessment anymore because they don't have any history, background. They don't know who they're dating. Yeah. And that's abnormal. Our species is designed to like be attracted to each other, fall in love, and make babies out of that. Like that's the natural, like that's the ideal design. I know there've been rapes, there've been exploitation, but a lot of the social guardrails that were created that looked oppressive as a young feminist, but now I see as having some value to women of, get your education, meet someone while you're getting your higher education, go like have these courting rituals of dances and things just to see what your chemistry is like. Like dancing is a great way to learn if you have good sexual chemistry with someone without actually having sex with them. That's a brilliant invention across cultures. It's true.
No, you're right. I was just about to be like, but then you want to have sex with them and then you're supposed to abstain.
Yeah, you have to that's where the social mores came in, where it's
easier said than done.
Now it is, but it used to be you can end up pregnant with this guy and he just leaves you and your life is completely ruined.
Right.
It's completely ruined. So women need to go back to kind of pretending birth control doesn't exist, pretending abortion doesn't exist. Like, would I have sex with this guy? Would I take this risk with this man if those options weren't available to me?
Yes. And my concern, and I think probably some right-wing men are saying this, is that we should get rid of birth control and abortion for specifically that reason, so that women are forced to go back to these roles, and we can get back to the traditional family, because otherwise women are just going to be sluts and whores.
I think it's better for our generation to do, what do they call it in the 12-step programs, a fearless moral inventory of our experiences and be really straight. And I know no one listens to their elders, but the more information we can get out to young people of like, you don't want to go back to this, but you also don't want to stay on this path. Date as though the sexual revolution never happened.
Yeah.
And really be discerning. And sexual restraint's not a bad thing. Like, learn some sexual restraint.
I mean, sorry everyone, in case you missed it, I have a cold, so that's why I'm sniffling and touching my face, and I'm drinking like a super gingery tea that's also full of ginger, so it keeps getting stuck to my lips. So sorry everybody, but yeah, I mean, again, I don't disagree with you. But I think it's like a big part of it, I think, is just being honest with ourselves, which was hard for young women to do because we were lied to. But now that we know, like, stop pretending that you're really into sleeping with a bunch of strange men. You're not really. Nobody's really into that. And if you really dig deep, I think you'll find that, yeah, okay, maybe sometimes that's fun when it happens, but then what? Like, it's not fun in the long term. It's not really emotionally or physically, spiritually satisfying, and probably often you end up feeling let down because the sex was bad, or you end up feeling disrespected and degraded because he leaves and doesn't call you again. Like, it's not a good setup for women. It's kind of a gross setup for women. Yeah, I mean, it's like, yeah, first of all, start by not dating online and not going to meet strange men and hooking up with them that night. But a second, yeah, I mean, you should be, trying to connect with somebody and trying to discern whether or not they're actually genuinely interested in you and interested in being with you in the long term, if you're going to be having sex with them, and not just thinking, oh, well, like, I'll just fuck him tonight and then somebody else the next night and somebody else the next night. And that's so fun. Is it that fun? Like, I don't know. Like, and I know it's not all or one thing. Like, it really isn't black or white. Like, it's very easy. And most people do seem to interpret these conversations in extremes and be like, oh, well, we shouldn't, sex can be fun casually sometimes. I'm like, sure, it can be, but we're talking about what's best and ideal. And we're also talking about how people are wired. The vast majority of women are wired, and what the vast majority of men will get away with or pull out.
Yeah. I think it's so important when we have these conversations to, like, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite. The reason I have these ideas is because I made a lot of decisions that led to unhappiness and bad feelings in myself. Like, I have had many, many, many casual sex encounters as a young woman, and I felt gross after nearly every single one of them. And none of them really brought me joy or happiness. Even the ones where, like, more of like a fuck buddy situation didn't really meet my need. I was still looking for a boyfriend. I just had a guy that for some reason I didn't bond deeply with. It's just like that can happen. I got pregnant through a casual sexual encounter and kept the baby. That's my first child. Like, I am not trying to come across as a hypocrite. I'm just saying that, again, I don't want to say mistakes were made, but there were unintended negative consequences of the sexual revolution and of second wave feminism. And we need to figure out a way to course correct without turning the clock back, because I don't want the old problems back for women.
Yeah.
Or
For
men,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Did you read any of these articles about the women? So there was one article, these all came out around the same time. So there was one article that was about the women, and they were talking about Gen X women, so women who are in their 40s and 50s who are quietly quitting their marriages. This was in The Cut. And then there was an article in the Times that was called "The Case for Ending a Long, Mostly Good Marriage," which was interesting because it was written by, excuse me, Kathy Hanauer, who was married to Daniel Jones, and they founded the Modern Love column together.
Oh, wow.
Which I used to love. I feel like eventually it started to irritate me for, I think, woke reasons, but I loved that column for a while. I remember like when I was a burgeoning writer and I had yet to publish anything, that was like my big dream, was that one day I would be published in the Modern Love column, but they did not accept my submission. I have not looked back at it, but I bet it was bad. So fair enough. And so Kathy ended and Daniel ended their relationship. She's in her 60s, and she writes about how she felt about that. And then there was another article that was also very good in the Free Press titled "I Thought My Marriage Was Broken, Then I Stayed in It." And she's also she would be a boomer, I suppose. They were married for, they are now have been married for 30 years, and she sort of thought maybe her marriage was ending. She wasn't, connecting with her husband, yada, yada, yada. And they stayed together really kind of for practical reasons, like the house and the kids, for financial reasons. And then things got better, and now they're in a happy partnership again. So it worked out. But yeah, the article about the women quietly quitting their marriages, I mean, what that means is like, for the most part, it sounds like these women are staying in their marriages, but they're just kind of giving up, or they're like renegotiating the contract in terms of what that means. So maybe it means they're not living together and they're seeing other people. But yeah, they're just kind of, checking out because it got bad, and I guess they feel like there's not anything they can do about it anymore, but it feels like too complicated or hard or bad to actually divorce.
Why? Like, okay, one was behind a paywall and the other one I didn't read. So I did most of my homework, but I didn't do the quiet quitting ones. Well, you send me a lot of homework.
Sorry. I know. Okay.
I did read a lot of things this time. Okay, so what needs were not being met in these mostly good marriages?
Well, I think so. When we're talking about the quietly quitting of the marriages, I mean, we're not talking about domestic abuse.
Yeah.
We're talking about women who I think they feel like they're not connecting to their husband anymore. Their husband's not connecting to them, or, they just are really unhappy in the marriage. And let me see if I'm going to read some quotes from here. So, either they're not attracted to their partner anymore, or they feel like their husbands aren't really like listening to them or trying to connect with them on an emotional level. So husbands tune out their disenchanted wives, like Charlie Brown deflects the monotonous drone of his school teacher. They make flimsy promises to engage more on an emotional level or to help out around the house. Maybe they vacuum for a month or two, or act all intrigued when a partner vents about an incapable colleague, but eventually the extra credit effort falls by the wayside or just doesn't feel like enough. In some cases, the man's need to be lauded for taking on a fraction of the physical load only punctuates how much a woman has to accomplish every single day. It started that thing where it's pretty common, we hear this a lot, where men are kind of blindsided when their wives leave them, and they're like, what? I thought everything's fine. And meanwhile, the wife feels like she's been saying that she's been unhappy forever and trying to talk to him about it or address it or whatever. So here's another quote that It says, this is by the author of the article, my father nearly collapsed when my mother, excuse me, finally told him their marriage was over. It was a gut punch to his ego. He never fathomed she would leave. Middle-aged men just allow the marriage to die and then accept it. This is a quote from John Macklinger, a divorce attorney in New Jersey who coaches men in marital transition. But women emotionally get to the point where they're like, I can't do this anymore. So I think that's sort of what's happening is, and then they just feel like they sort of don't really have any options. So yeah, they just kind of check out of the marriage.
I don't know why these people got married. I mean, you have to take vows to each other. People don't honor those at all. I think just don't get married if you view marriage as disposable.
Yeah.
Call it something else. But I think most people still say until death do we part, not until like until the sex gets boring do we part, or until I'm begrudgingly doing the dishes just because you're nagging at me do we part. Like that's a problem with human commitment, that people won't stick it out. I don't know why these people, if they're mostly good marriages, can't just figure out a way to be nice to each other and go back, like remember what they used to like about each other, try to do those things again.
I think that's a worthwhile point, which is, why are you getting married if you're not planning to do it for life? Then why are you taking these vows and getting married in the first place? Like, if you just want to be in a long-term relationship until both of you don't want to do it anymore, then you should just do that.
Don't get married. Yeah.
Like that was, so the article that was written by Kathy Hanauer, who divorced Daniel Jones, wrote, when I got married more than 3 decades ago, I did not want to promise to love my husband until death do us part. I did want to try. Dan was my soulmate and sweetheart, and I felt lucky and excited to start a life and family with him. But death, we hoped, was light years away. We were 29. And a part of me rebelled against vowing my entire life to a monogamous cohabitating partnership. I'd lived alone in my 20s and loved it. I'd always needed private space to fully unfold. I'd also enjoyed dating and sleeping odd hours. I'm an obsessive thinker and writer, love it or not. I worried marriage might suffocate me, which is also sort of like how I feel, but that's why I never made it a priority to get married to anybody, because it didn't make sense for me. And then she goes on to say, so I told Dan I couldn't swear to what I couldn't predict. He countered, people won't come to our wedding to hear, I'll give it my best shot. But he had a point. I said the vows. We were both right. He in his confidence, me to think twice. Now, 33 years later, I'm proud of our long, loving marriage, nurturing children, homes, friendships, pets, collaboratively writing and editing books and articles. We laughed and learned and lived, first struggling financially, but together as artists, later finding our footing. We were a connected, compatible team for a charmed, exciting, mostly happy chunk of our lives. But every marriage has its issues, and the empty nest catapults them to the surface. We had different ways of feeling and expressing intimacy. Dan was working harder than ever, but now with a new team that didn't include me, and the more he, understandably, devoted himself to that world, the more I both escaped into my own projects and expanded into the sweet peace of autonomy again. When we did hang out, we didn't want to do or talk about the same things. A couples therapist suggested we might not make it.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's a big part, is couples therapy often increases the divorce rate, in my opinion. I think that
Totally.
Yeah.
I think a ton of people break up in couples therapy.
I think couples therapy, because the whole therapy industry is designed to focus on pathology, and there's so much promotion of divorce in that field. So yeah, so a couples therapist was part of the reason they realized they needed to separate. Is that what she's saying?
Well, at the time they said, they were like, no, like they didn't want to break up. But I mean, I bet the suggestion stuck in their brains, maybe. She says, still we drifted further, each feeling less loved and less loving. We had always laughed, but now we didn't, at least not enough. So I don't know if it was because of the couples therapist, but yeah, I guess they were just drifting apart and feeling less close. I mean, I've been to couples therapies with boyfriends. I mean, we weren't married, so I guess it matters less whether or not we stay together. But they very often encourage you to break up.
Yeah.
Like, I think probably more often than the alternative.
Therapists tell people these days to never to cancel their grandma. Like, don't talk to your grandma because she's a Trumper. Like, therapists are not, as a whole, creating a healthier social structure for all of us right now. It's very narcissistic, very individualistic. It's all about you and your feelings.
Are you happy? Are you happy? Are you happy? Which is very important. I shouldn't be sarcastic about that because it's actually very important to me that I'm happy in my life, and that's why I live as I do. But it is when I think back about it, I'm like, I'm pretty sure every couples therapist that I ever went to with a boyfriend, suggested that maybe we should probably break up, and and I know a lot of people who've broken up in couples therapy as well. But yeah, so she starts out not thinking of the vows as forever. So that's
right. Yeah. She didn't mean it when she said it. And she admits that. I wonder how much of that is reconstructed in her mind. You know how when things are bad in a relationship, you can only remember the parts of the relationship that support that narrative. And when you are getting divorced, when you're breaking up, you're in a place of justifying the breakup. I wonder what we'll never know. She'll never know how she actually felt. Our memories are not a clear reflection of what actually happened, especially emotional memory.
Yeah, she could be looking. Do you think she's kind of like coping in retrospect, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe she's got journals that say that's how she felt. I could be completely wrong, but I think there's a pretty good chance that she's saying, well, I never really was comfortable with that. I never really wanted something for a lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, if you divorce and you're happy you're divorced, then that's fine.
But why not stay married and just have different places to live? Like, I don't understand what the benefit of divorce here is.
Well, and they don't even he has a new girlfriend, but he still pays for her health insurance and pays her a monthly stipend. So, she's not really too financially damaged by the situation, but she does talk about how the divorce has made her more financially insecure.
Yeah, and it's made her children's legacy more financially insecure. Divorce is expensive. Men are always talking about that. If she's going to take half your stuff, I'm like, if you're viewing your stuff as your stuff, not our stuff, you're already on the way to divorce. Like, that's where you went wrong in your marriage. Like, don't.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, marriage, I mean, it's community property. You have decided to yoke yourselves, and you've got a collective wagon behind you. It's our stuff. It's not my stuff, your stuff. And yeah, people just aren't taking it seriously anymore. I think maybe instead of legalizing gay marriage, we should have just gotten rid of marriage and just keep it for just religious people who actually believe this is a meaningful contract to enter into with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, the point of marriage is that you're a team and you're collaborative now. You're not two separate individuals who are doing their two separate individual thing. And you can't really be selfish in marriage, which is, again, probably why I never wanted to get married.
I mean, you can. Plenty of people are, and they're usually on their way to divorce. I'm always just so shocked when married people tell me that they have completely separate bank accounts from each other, spouses, where I just can't even conceptualize that in my marriage. Like, everything is ours. Like, we have a life together. It's not what's mine, what's his. There are, maybe like heirlooms or things we inherited that those like that's meaningful to me. It has value. And I guess we both collectively own it, but we don't really consider it ours. But that's like the rare possession that would fall into that. But most people still keep this yours, mine mentality now where many people do when they enter marriage, which is different than how it used to be.
Yeah, it is interesting because I think, yeah, as I've always wondered, what's the point of getting married? For somebody like me, there never really seemed to be a point. And then I would see all these other people getting married and sort of be like, well, why are they getting married? And I didn't understand the point at all for a long time. But now my view is that there is a point, but there's a lot of people who are getting married for the wrong point. Like, I think that the point is that, like you say, you're building a life together, you're having kids, you're a family, you're a unit. And a lot of people are just kind of getting married because they fall in love and think it will be romantic and maybe they want to throw a party or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's true. There's a whole industry around that.
And don't get me wrong, I love a party and I love weddings. So thank you for inviting me. But
yeah, weddings are pretty great. I just don't know what it means to people anymore. Yeah, everything's disposable. Marriage is disposable. Pregnancy is disposable. Relationships are disposable.
Yeah.
And that's probably
sex doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. No big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how you reclaim something sacred with these institutions and these parts of humanity without that. It's not sacred to religiously impose it upon people. Like I don't know how we get people back to some kind of understanding about.
I don't know either, because I keep, I've always had this flaw where I think that if I just explain things to people, then they'll understand.
Yeah.
And so I killed myself trying to explain to people why, the sex industry was bad for women, or, why men couldn't become women and that we needed to protect women-only spaces. And at the end of the day, I think people want to understand what they want to understand, and they choose not to understand the rest of it if they don't want to hear it. But yeah, so I guess for my part, I'm trying to explain to women how they were wired on an evolutionary sense and in a biological sense, which is, again, to attach and bond to men they sleep with and to not take that lightly, and that they didn't evolve to be having casual sex with a bunch of strange men and not have any feelings about it, and to not attach. And also, it's okay to attach. Like it was turned into a bad thing to get attached, and you shouldn't get attached. And that's so messed up, because it's not bad to get attached. It's nice to get attached to somebody, and it's nice to feel like safe and secure with somebody, especially if it's somebody you're having sex with.
I know.
You should want to feel safe and secure with the person you're having sex with. Good Lord.
I think, you absolutely want to feel safe and secure with that person. And I think I'm going to say another thing that I'm like trying to police myself out of saying, because people get really mad about it. And I'm going to preface this with, I remain as pro reproductive sovereignty as a human can possibly be. And I don't want women's choices taken away. But I'm just going to say that here's a good litmus test for whether or not you should have sex with a man, is if you would want to kill any offspring that arise from your sexual union with this person. If you were sure, if you got pregnant from the sex you're about to have, you would have an abortion. Don't have sex with him. That's a sign you don't feel safe and secure, and you're not bonded with him. Yeah. It doesn't mean I don't think you should have choices, but it's a sign from your psyche and your body that you shouldn't be having sex with him.
I think that's fair. I think that's a good approach. I would never. I mean, the abortion question is hard because a lot of men have responded to me in this conversation that we're having by saying, essentially maybe then abortion shouldn't be allowed, because the whole problem is that there's no repercussions for having casual sex. And if I'm saying that's a problem, then maybe you shouldn't be allowed to kill the baby. Maybe you should be forced to have the baby so you make good choices. And abortion is easier to access now than it was at certain points in the past. But again, I sort of think, I mean, you can speak to this better than I can, but I still think that ending pregnancies was pretty common and normal for most of history. It just was that it had to happen very early on in the pregnancy. Is that right?
I think it was pretty common, but I also think only women who already had a sense of internal sovereignty, or women who were being pressured into it by powerful men, had access to it. I don't think the majority of women had access to it. I think it was really common. But I think when you make things legal, whether it's abortion or marijuana, you no longer have to be a sovereign thinker and an internal, like an outlaw to do those things, right? And so there is something different I think most people can't handle too much freedom, and I don't know how to deal with that, right?
Because they have to have freedom. You have to give it to them, because the alternative is authoritarianism,
which I'm really not into. Yeah. And I do believe I'm a daughter of the American Revolution. I completely believe we are born with inalienable rights, so that we are endowed with these rights when we get here. And I don't believe it is moral to force women to continue pregnancies against their will. I think we've gotten really cavalier about it. And I think that there's a natural maturing process of getting pregnant because you fell in love with somebody and just having the baby. And I think that there's that's not happening anymore. People are waiting for, it has to be right. Everything has to be right. I'm not ready. Where I think people are just treating pregnancy as disposable, and that's stunting our development as a species and stunting things. And it's I'm so tricky to even talk about this, because I don't think there should be legal restrictions on abortion, but I think there should be more discussion about the reality of it.
Yeah. And I think, it's interesting to talk about it in terms of freedom, because a lot of people really hate freedom and choices because they feel like they don't want that kind of responsibility, and they don't want to be accountable for the choices that they make with all this freedom. So they want somebody else to do it for them. But you're right that, in this context, women were given this freedom and this choice through the sexual revolution and through reproductive rights, that there's positive aspects to all of that too, for sure, but then there was negative aspects, and now it's well, what are we accountable for? And we just don't have any ethics around sex at all, and we have no morals around sex at all, because it's just a free-for-all.
Right. And we've completely separated sex from reproduction. And that brings in more of the cyborg. People aren't even making babies with sex anymore. That more and more people are making babies in labs and having them implanted in their bodies. Complete separation of intercourse, heterosexual sex from reproduction entirely. We're just getting further and further from that understanding. I think ideally, and the world's never going to be ideal, but maybe some people can strive to live up to these ideals. Ideally, women should be taught fertility awareness and taught sexual discernment, and men should be taught to, the old gentlemanly ways, to behave in a way that that lets women know they are a safe person to be around. They're responsible, they're respectful, and that people shouldn't just
And that they should be responsible for the babies that they create through their irresponsible sex. Like men are always complaining about women deciding to have babies and making them pay for it after the fact. And it's like, well, then don't come inside a woman if you don't want to get her pregnant. What do you think is going to happen? Like, come on, you take responsibility too.
I know.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, men need to like absolutely take responsibility for their fertility. But I actually think that laws around child support outside of the marriage contract have not been a net gain for women either. I think that a lot of abortions happen because women don't want to be legally tied to this guy for the next 18 years. And if she could just walk away and have the baby on her own, she would do it in many cases. But now the system recognizes ejaculation as the same contribution to making a baby as making the baby with your blood, sweat, and tears and nearly a year of your life.
Like, do men get equal rights to access to a baby just because he came in a woman? Is that how it works? Because I think you're right. I think a lot of women get abortions because they're like, I didn't actually get an abortion, but I was in a situation that I felt this way about. But where you're like, I don't want to be attached to this man for the rest of my life. He's going to torture me forever or abuse me forever. Like if it's with an abusive guy. And I know. You're like, this is going to be a life of hell where I'm never going to be able to escape this man if I have his baby.
I know cases where men have gotten father's rights lawyers before the baby's even born to start that process if they want custody rights. As soon, like I know many cases where a woman has left a man early in the pregnancy and he's torturing her. Like I know men who've sued to be present at the birth, even though I don't know of a case where the judge has granted that, at least not here in New Mexico, but that is extreme stress on a woman for a man to say, like, I have a right to be at the birth of my baby, even if she is, all he did was ejaculate in her and she doesn't even like him and she's chosen to continue a pregnancy. This is something that not honoring what the marriage contract was about has really wreaked upon our society, and that the well-intentioned second wave push to get child support for children born outside of the marriage contract has created a lot of problems for women. I know women have had one night stands and the guys find them over a year later and sue for half custody and win it.
Why would they even want custody?
Because they're controlling and they're like, that's my offspring, No, I think it should be if men want relationships with their children, they should have to put a ring on it.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you. Chris in the comments says, as a lesbian, I disagree with gay marriage. Hot take. That's interesting. Why? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm curious too.
Tell us why, Chris. I mean, I don't really see the point in getting married if you're gay or lesbian. I guess it's so that you can have a say if your partner's in hospital.
I think you have to access the legal benefits that used to only be available if you were somebody's spouse. But now most hospital systems will, like, the hospital thing isn't such an issue anymore. Health insurance, life insurance.
In Canada, if you're common law, you can get on your partner's health insurance if you've lived together for a year. So it doesn't, like in Canada, it doesn't really make any difference in terms of like taxes and health insurance. It might be different in the US.
I don't even know anymore what it's like, but whenever the push for gay marriage was happening, health insurance was a big part of it. What are the other social benefits, like visitation in the hospital, inheritance rights, these things? But you can write a will and give your property to whoever you want. Yeah, I think it came from that. And instead of asking, like, why are these particular social benefits tied to romantic relationship status, there was the push for gay marriage. And maybe because people wanted to pair bond for life. But, gay couples have just as high of a divorce rate.
Yeah, but if we're saying, okay, marriage is about the family unit, there's no family if you're gay or lesbian. I mean, sometimes there is, but arguably, and lots of people do argue that two gay men shouldn't be allowed to because then you're talking about surrogacy for the most part.
They
Like
talk
gay
about
men
yeah,
would use surrogates
adoption.
so that they can have their own
Yeah.
baby. I guess sometimes they adopt, but I it's
Yeah,
easier. I think it's probably easier to go through a surrogate than it is to adopt.
Oh yeah, I don't think it's more expensive. They're both expensive. People want their own baby. They want a fresh
Yeah.
baby. But meaning like they're genetically related to the baby. I think that, yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. I mean, that was a big right-wing talking point when the people who were fighting against gay marriage, like the focus on the family talking points were the marriage contract exists because children are born out of heterosexual unions. And this is a way of society protecting children and making sure their needs are met. Because again, before the sexual revolution, there were not laws that mandated that men had to pay child support to babies born out of one-night stands or non-marriage relationships. And I think that was a bad deal for women. A lot of women would disagree with me, but I don't think it's worth the amount of child support you're getting to be controlled by a man legally for the next 18 years. And I don't think the custody laws around couples who were never really together and having that child like born onto a battlefield and having two homes from the very beginning, it's like a twisted perversion of the Solomon story in the Bible, where now like you're raising the half baby, like they've cut the baby in half and you each get half of it. And we've, instead of viewing that as that's crazy, a loving parent would never agree to that. That's the reality for so many families. I think child support laws outside of marriage have been a nightmare for women and children.
Someone in the comments, Nicole, says marriage was never constructed to protect children, please. I don't know that it was constructed to protect children, but I think it became about protecting children. I think initially it was about property. And
I think it's all of it. I mean, there's like the
families.
Well, if you
like joining together of two families, that it was like a practical joining of those two families for financial reasons or social reasons or whatever.
I think sometimes it was about that. I think in the Jewish tradition, there's the marriage contract is the ketubah that really is all about protecting the woman, of like what the man's obligations are to her. And if he breaks that contract, she gets everything like that. That's a patriarchal society, but a matrilineal society. And that it was about protecting her interests in the marriage and therefore protecting the interests of her children. I would never say marriage was never constructed to protect children. I think that there are examples of marriage that weren't about that, but marriage was about, I think it's always been about known paternity. And in that, that like men wanted a way to make sure these are their children, and marriage was about that to a certain degree. There are lots of things. I think we've like thrown the baby out with the bathwater. Like there were parts of the marriage contract that were protective to women and children. We just threw the whole thing out.
Yeah, this is what I think. It's people are looking at this in too much of a binary way. Yeah. Like it doesn't have to be all one thing or all the other thing. I mean, we have progressed quite a bit. So surely as a society, we can come to some kind of solution that recognizes reality and ethics and morals without going back to the complete oppression of women.
Yeah, totally.
I hope so anyway.
There's just like never any nuance. Right.
Well, I think we've covered a lot.
Did we fix it?
As always, we've solved all of the problems, and hopefully everybody was listening.
Please take our advice.
Okay. I need to go retreat to my cold. I think it's almost out of here. Just one more night of 15 hours of sleep. I've been sleeping a lot for the past couple of days.
That's the best thing.
It helped so much. Like I felt so sick on Sunday. I had like daggers in my throat, and I just, I drink a ton of tea and do all of those things, and I just slept, and I felt about 800 times better the next day. So I'm still a little symptomy, but I'm mostly good. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us. I enjoyed this conversation as always. We'll be back next Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and on X. I also post these conversations after the fact on Spotify and on my and Mary Lou's Substack. So on Spotify, just look up Where Are All the Women? And you can find my Substack at meganmurphy.ca, and you can find Mary Lou on Substack at Mary Lou Singleton. Please become a paid subscriber. It's the best way to support my work in any case. And you get access to all my paywalled articles, which are a lot of them, and bonus episodes, things like that. I'm on Twitter at Meghan E. Murphy. Mary Lou is on Twitter at ML_Singleton. Mary Lou's website is enchantedfamilymedicine.com. I can't think of anything else. Did we get it all?
We'll solve it all again next
Probably
week.
not.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Mary Lou. Thanks,
Feel
everybody.
better. Take
See
care.
you guys. Thanks. See you guys next week. Bye.